Hi everybody, and welcome to week 7. Your drawing session this week is about looking at rounded corners, making shapes, solid geometric forms a little bit kind of softer where needed and required by looking at kind of edges, corners, etc. Right, what I'd like you to do first of all is to go on to Panopto and look at the sketching folder. In that sketching folder, look for week 6, and the first one of the videos in there just called Rounding Corners, not Rounding Corners B, but the standard one. This is about a 15-minute video. What I'd like you to do is watch this very, very carefully. Now, Paul has very kindly done these videos for us so that we can put these online for your kind of like perusal. Now, have a look at it very, very carefully. As I've said here, watch the video very carefully and note the techniques that Paul is kind of constructing with. Now, this needs to be done with a fair bit of skill and a fair bit of sensitivity as well. Think very carefully about where Paul talks about foreshortening and what that means. Make sure that you take notice of that. Look at the kind of basic skills where he takes the kind of standard box and then softens it by applying kind of rounded corners, etc. Now, I've got some slides that will follow this, so what I'd like you to do is to undertake this video, pay very careful attention to it, and then what I'll do is once you're finished with this, I'll pick up with you after you've seen the video. Enjoy it. Like I say, please take notice of all the kind of techniques Paul has gone through, and then what you're going to be doing is applying these as a kind of a warm-up once you finish. Okay, so Paul's video has very succinctly gone through the technique of using perspective and how we construct kind of softer edges to kind of like squarer edges. And it's been done successful. Paul reiterated this 2 or 3 times to you. At the point where he first of all started to show you how you constructed geometrically with those by rounding off those corners. So looking at the kind of like the small boxes in the corner and how you get those rounded corners, and then how you make the rest of the construction of those from that on that box. Now, I've done an illustration here in the middle there which just follows on from Paul. So we've got the square box there, and where diagram 1, 2 and 3 show you how those corners are constructed. But of course, as Paul has gone through, he's shown you how eventually, when you've got the skills, you can draw those in without having to construct. So in the second part of his video, he started to talk about how you just look at where the foreshortening lines are and you draw those in, and then you just put the kind of curves in there. And last of all, if you remember, he did that explaining with the experience that you can put those curves on straight away and creating your own kind of like foreshortening. So this diagram here really just backs up what Paul's been talking about. What I'd like you to do is have a practice at 2 boxes that Paul has shown you. Now, do one with a kind of a small radius edge, and then do another one beside it. So put 2 good substantially sized drawings, not titsy little things, but think about an A3 sheet of paper and 2 big, bold, cube drawings on that page, filling the page with just 2 of those. One with a small rounded corner approach, and then do one with a kind of a larger radius. So you can look at how these kind of corners soften very harsh edges. Think about the same kind of constructions. Maybe on the first one, you choose to do those kind of corners where you construct, and then on the next one with a larger kind of radii, perhaps just do it so that you just think about the foreshortening line that goes into it without too much construction, so you can use your eye to get those curves right. Now, what I'd like you to do afterwards is to think about maybe just doing a bit more practicing, but perhaps thinking in this case, if you look on the sketch sheet here on the right hand side, what I've done is turn my cube into kind of like a child's storage box. And I put a cushion on the top of it so that they can sit on it. It's just a kind of a novelty idea, really. But what I've done here is I've then sort of taken my box and I put a recess in the top, so you've got a removable lid that can be taken out. You put your toys in, it goes back in, and then a cushion can drop in on the top of it. And as you can see, I've got my exploded view of that cushion floating above. I've also put a couple of like little legs or little feet underneath it as well to kind of pull it off the floor. So all of a sudden the rounded corner cube becomes an object, piece of furniture in this case. If you look at the stall to one side, on the left hand side, it just shows how, in a real product, how these kind of work. So if you look at the square-edged tubular legs, look and notice how on the inside facing edge, they've got a rounded kind of surface to it. So you've got a square edge on one side, and then you've got a radius on the other, and it runs all the way along the leg. And look at how that softens it in comparison to the square off edge. Look also too at the kind of the seat pad itself, which is concrete. Now concrete, as we know, is a very harsh material and it looks brutal when it's uncoloured. So if you look at what the designers have done, is they've created curves where the kind of like the bottom fits into it. So that gives you a little bit of comfort there. So it's taken the flatness away. But more importantly, if you look on the top edge, it's got a very tiny radius, so it's taken off that sharp edge of the concrete. Underneath it, it's got a slightly larger radius, so that you've kind of taken away some of that brutalist material. And underneath it, a larger radius, and at the front as well, a larger radius, to kind of make it softer to kind of sit on. So that's the application, that's why we're teaching you this. So you can see a product here with 3 to 4 different kind of like radiused edges on there of all of different kind of sizes. So that's the reason why I'd like you to try doing 2 cubes, where one with a small radiused edge, one with a kind of a larger. And then maybe on the next sheet to do maybe something like I've done, like a cube, or you can turn it into whatever you like. But think about a product that could be a box of some sort. It doesn't have to be a cube, it could be a rectangle, entirely up to you. Now on this page, there is another application I'd like you to have to go at. You can do exactly the same products that you've done before, i.e. a cube or a box, whatever you'd like to call it. But in this case, rather than putting on a radiused edge, put on a 45-degree edge. That 45-degree edge is called a chamfer. Okay, so it kind of takes off the sharp edge and makes something that you can sit on or handle a little bit kind of softer. And takes off that kind of brutal corner, which could be sharp and uncomfortable. And what I've done with this one is I've just shaped this object into kind of like a strange looking elongated C, really, when you think about it. I've cut out the centre. It looks like it could be a shelf underneath it, so this could be a little kind of like stool that you sit on with a shelf to put kind of papers, magazines, books or something like that underneath it. And notice how on that edge, on the right hand side edge of that, I put a chamfer on that one as well to differentiate between that and kind of the square edges. So doing the chamfers is the same as the radius. You mark how deep you want them, how far they come down, how deep they go into the top part, and then you kind of mark them. What I did was I put the 45-degree angle line on the outer edge, then drew the lines across. Same from the right hand side, did the kind of corner, pulled the lines across, and where they converge, we end up getting a triangle, because on that corner I put a chamfer too. So notice how they all kind of work and match up very carefully to one another. So have a go at doing that, and I just did a quick scribble in the studio on Tuesday when we were doing this, to show how you could do rounded kind of tops, like on a beaker or something like that. And I've got a chamfered one on there, which is a quick scribble, not perfect in perspective by any means. And underneath it, I've just kind of done this ring. It's not an object, it's just a kind of drawing exercise. So I've done the ring, which I've drawn in there. And I've done another radius corner in there, but in this case, rather than being a positive, it's a negative rad in there. And how to show it, I put those kind of little curved lines that just kind of run the way around it so that your eye visually sees that that's a curve. I haven't put any kind of tonal work as such into that. If I was going to mark that up with either kind of markers or with pencils, then yes, I could render it so that you could see the dark and light shades and the tonal marks. But because I've done this in linear form, a good way of actually describing a round corner in this case, I've just put those kind of little round radii in there just to kind of so your eye follows them around. So if you have time or the inclination, have a go at doing that. The application of chamfers, as you can see to the left hand side, is a sketch sheet from one of our second years. And we've been looking at the Dyson hairdryers and how they kind of use chamfers to kind of soften the edge and to show where the airflow comes through. And they work quite nicely, and they can actually soften a shape very, very kind of beautifully. So it could be a chamfered edge, it could be kind of a rounded corner, but they do make a difference to the overall form of a product, as you will see when you kind of try these more practices. Okay, so good luck with that. Spend the rest of the session doing practice, following Paul's instructions at first, and then trying out some ideas of your own, like the chamfered idea, perhaps doing a sort of stool with kind of rounded edges, etc., etc., and just kind of get to use those kind of like soft round edges. What we're going to be doing next week is we're going to be looking at contours, so we can extend our understanding of kind of using organic forms. And next week we're stepping up the challenge, which I will tell you all about then. So good luck with that, and I'll see you all next week.